Turn heads and bring the hype with a custom hype chain from Lotwin. Perfect for youth sports, fantasy football, or just flexing your pride. Go to Lotwin.com, use the promo code TCCPOD for 10% off your order. That's Lotwin.com, promo code TCCPOD for 10% off. Get your custom hype chain and get hype with Lotwin. What's up, everyone? Welcome to This Day in Philly Sports History for June 20th, 2025. I'm your host, Jim Montgomery. Welcome to a feel-good Friday edition of the podcast. Big show today, like we always do on Friday. This is the final show before the streak ends. After 1,017 days straight, I'm taking a day off tomorrow. As I've been telling you, I'm going to be switching to Monday through Friday format, kind of in a position to open up some other doors and avenues. So after 1,017 days, taking a day off this weekend, but doesn't mean you're going to miss out on a lot of good stuff. As I've been mentioning, we debut some new segments this week. Rewind the Weekend, which we'll do every Monday. What If Wednesday, where we talk about and go back to the roots, what if something happened the other way in Philly sports history. Throwback Thursday. Yesterday, we spotlighted the 2010 Phils, often overlooked in that whole golden era run from 2007 to 2011. Of course, Motivation Positivity Tuesdays and Fridays with AI are going to stay, but there will be no show tomorrow in an effort to really, like I said, free up some time, get me back to doing some interviews. We have the Eagles pregame show coming up. So all of that. So just kind of a programming note for you today. But this weekend is all about the Phillies and Mets. And they got out of Florida. They won the series. Took 3 out of 4. Christopher Sanchez is a stud. Absolute stud. One of the concerns with him was how he pitched on the road. He could have totally gone out and probably thrown that 9th inning. But went 8 strong. Phillies win it 2-1, did just enough offensively. Kyle Schwarber with the difference maker in the 8th. Bryson Stott starting to get hot just in time for the Mutts. Went 2 for 3. Otto Kemp is still playing well. I think Thompson said at some point he will be kind of moved into left field a little bit as well. But man, he looked like a rookie yesterday with some of the base running. And I got to put some of that on the third base coach as well. Have to be more visible, more aware of what's happening. But if that was on Kemp, he's a rookie. That'll come. But I'd rather get those mistakes out of the way now before the games really start ramping up and mattering. Ryan Kirkering came in, got the saves. Good overall, good win. It was a solid pitcher's duel. Not sure what the Marlins manager was doing pulling the starter out when he did, but hey, it worked out well for the Phillies. I wish they would have gotten more than 2 runs, but what are you going to do? But it's Phillies Mets. They're going into this series tied. So this all of a sudden becomes a much bigger series than what it already is. Citizens Bank is going to be rocking this weekend. All 3 games are going to be must watch. The Phillies have Zach Wheeler going tonight, McAble tomorrow, and then Jesus Luzardo on Sunday. But man, some good, meaningful, exciting baseball here in June. Phillies Mutts this weekend. They're going to have a little bit of a Mutts theme throughout the rest of the podcast. All right, some other quick housekeeping notes. Be sure to follow me on social media, Jimbo_Mont on Twitter and TikTok. On Instagram at Philly Jimbo. Subscribe to the YouTube channel, Jimbo_Mont. Continue to spread the word. If you're enjoying this, likely someone in your network will as well. I do have highlights, newspaper clippings, pictures, photos on my social media of whatever we're talking about that day. That is available where are all my social media, including Facebook and LinkedIn. So be sure to check that out. All right, yesterday's trivia question. We talked about the Sixers drafting Charles Barkley with the number 5 pick in the 1984 draft. And that draft was stacked. 5 Hall of Famers, including Charles Barkley, out of that. I asked you, who were the other 4? Hakeem Olajuwon, who went number 1. Michael Jordan, who went number 3. Can you imagine being Sam Bowie, the number 2 pick in that draft? And then John Stockton, who went 16, is in the Hall of Fame. The 5th Hall of Famer from that class, though, Oscar Smith, who was drafted by the Nets in the 6th round. He was offered a contract by the Nets, fully guaranteed. However, turned it down because of the way the rules of the NBA were. If you had an NBA contract, you aren't. I don't know if it was international basketball or the NBA, but he would not have been able to play for Brazil's national team, which was way more important to him. So he declined the NBA, stayed in Brazil and played, and went over to Europe as well, but became one of the best FIBA basketball players of all time. He is in the Naismith Hall of Fame. So Oscar Smith from Brazil, drafted by the Nets in the 6th round, is the 5th Hall of Famer out of that 1984 class. Just a stacked top half of that draft, though. All right, we have some Eagles news, and I saw this story, and it was happened a couple days ago, but I thought this was worth mentioning because with all the lists and everything that 94 WIP is doing, seems to really be a Jalen Hurts debate about just where does he rank. And I made my feelings clear. I've told you I couldn't care less where Jalen is ranked in anybody's official list. As long as he's winning, that to me is all that matters. And there were questions, and everybody talks about he's not the rah rah in your face kind of guy, and question his leadership. Well, this story didn't get as much publicity as I thought. There was an article in the Inquirer about it, but this is what people do. Like, they're not going to talk about this if it doesn't fit their agenda. But Jalen Hurts was very vocal and supportive of Dallas Goedert. Reached out to him during the whole free agent draft where it was uncertain whether they're going to trade him or not. And Dallas Goedert had this to say, that Jalen reached out to him a few times, but he said he didn't really recruit me back, but he made me feel like I was an important part of the team. Jalen flat out said, "You are important to me." And that to me is what a leader does. That is someone who recognizes it, knows it's a shitty situation, that whatever the Eagles' plan was didn't necessarily play out, I guess, the way they thought. They didn't have the suitors. I'm sure Dallas was looking for uh, potential trade partners and everything. But to have your quarterback reach out and say, "Listen, man, no matter what, you're an important part of this team. I need you. You're my guy." That's what leaders do. Nobody's talking about this, though, when they're making your lists and things like that. But that's my quarterback. That's QB1. And that's why Jalen Hurts is the leader of this team, and why I couldn't care less about where people have him ranked in lists and things like that. These are the things that leader, great, elite quarterbacks do. And you can guarantee that Dallas Goedert, coming on basically a contract year for him, is going to come out and feel good and feel like he's a part of this team. And I look for Dallas Goedert, as long as he stays healthy, to have a good season now this year. The other Eagles story, I've talked about this before. They do a phenomenal job. They have on their website, and they post it on their social media and everything, unscripted, basically a behind the scenes look at different things. And they showed the OTA mini camp, and it got me pumped. This team is so close. And the fact that Nick Sirianni flat out said, we're starting from scratch. Celebration time is over. It's time to get to work. It's time to get better. I mentioned that it doesn't matter what we did last year. We got to do it. And really, like, the guys are buying into it. And it's, again, say what you want. Nick Sirianni gets a lot of hate, some of it brought on by himself, but I think he's an elite coach as well. I do think the Eagles have a legitimate shot, but to run it back. But man, between the way the coach is getting them motivated in June, the fact that Jalen Hurts is going out of his way to talk to Dallas Goedert and make him feel better about just a bet. Like it's the business of the NFL. It's nobody's fault, but to make him feel better about that, I'm pumped, man. Got a great coach, great quarterback. Sign me up. This day in Philly sports history is proud to be a part of the Clashing Conferences Sports Fan Network, a growing community of diehard fans turning their sports passion into something special. Whether you're looking for unique shows, want to launch your own podcast but don't have the time, or need production services, the ClashingConferences.com has everything you need. Explore fan-driven content, become a member, or tap into their media services to level up your brand. That's ClashingConferences.com, where fans' voices get heard. All right, June 20th. And I told you we're going to have a Phillies Mets theme here with some of these things. We're going to go back to 1967 today. And first in 1967, Larry Jackson pitched a one-hitter versus the Mets. Phillies won the game 4-0. It was Jackson's 18th straight win against the Mets. Could not find any kind of proof or stats, and I'm sure there might be some older guys that have done it, but it has to be top 5, top 10 consecutive games against winning against the team. He did it while playing for the Cardinals, Cubs, and the Phillies. Now, Larry Jackson is always going to be a footnote in Phillies history, not because of beating the Mets 18 times in a row, but he was acquired along with Bob Bull for John Hernstein, Adolfo Phillips, and Ferguson Jenkins. Whoops. But he did beat the Mets. He was a Mets killer. But on this day, Phillies beat the Mets 4-0. Larry Jackson, a one-hitter, his 18th straight. But Larry is probably more well-known as being one of the guys the Phillies got in the infamous Ferguson Jenkins trade. Again, whoops. All right, 2004. Phillies beat the Royals 8-2. Jim Thome hit 2 home runs. Jimmy Rollins added an inside the park home run. It was the first in Citizens Bank Park history. He ended up with 4 inside the park home runs for his career. But a little side note here, playing right field for the Royals that day, Matt Stairs, who also hit a home run, and we all know Matt Stairs was one of the greatest home runs in Phillies history. All right, and now we're going to have a couple of Ryan Howard stories. And Ryan took on Mike Schmidt in our greatest individual season tournament yesterday. He won. He ended up with 71% of the vote. So in honor of Ryan Howard, who's moving on, our number 3 seed, MVP in 2006. Let's go back to that 2006 season. Ryan Howard went 3 for 4 this day, including 2 homers, knocked in all 7 of the Phillies' run, including a 460-foot moonshot that went to the third deck in right field at Citizens Bank Park. He became the first player to hit the third deck out there. And if you've ever been to Citizens Bank Park, like a lot of us have, that's a shot. 461 feet, third deck. But unfortunately, it wasn't enough as the Phillies lose to the Yankees 9-7. But Ryan Howard had himself a day, becoming the first one to hit the third deck in right field at Citizens Bank Park, knocking in all 7, and he was just unstoppable that season. No shocker that he moved on in our tournament. And then 2009, Ryan Howard was out of the lineup because he had spent the night before in the hospital with 104 fever. Came to the stadium, though, came off the bench as a pinch hitter in the 7th, crushed a 3-run homer to give the Phils a 5-3 lead. Unfortunately, Ryan Madson gave up 2 homers in the 9th as the Phils lose 6-5 to the Orioles. And then after the game, Ryan Howard was back in the hospital again. So left the hospital, came out, hit a pinch hit, 3-run homer to give the Phils the lead, and then went back to the hospital. That's just stuff of legends. And I know everybody talks about, oh, Ryan Howard's not clutch. Comes off the bench after being in the hospital with 104 fever, hits a 3-run homer to give the Phillies the lead, goes back to the hospital. I don't know how much more clutch you can get than that. But Ryan Howard certainly was Superman.
It's time for Fridays with AI, where we ask AI to rewrite Philly sports history. Every Friday, only on This Day in Philly Sports History.
That's right. It's time for Fridays with AI. And this might be the biggest Fridays with AI that we've had in a while. Fridays with AI is brought to you by Philly Goat. Go to phillygoat.com. Check out all of their Philly sports based apparel and accessories. I've talked about the rocks glasses, the coolers, slides, golf shirts, you name it. Philly Goat has it. Go rep Philly. Use the promo code Jim Montgomery to take 10% off your order. That's phillygoat.com, promo code Jim Montgomery, and they are our sponsor for Fridays with AI. So the NBA draft is Wednesday. On Monday, we talked about that horrible pre-draft day that the Sixers had when they had traded the number one pick and Moses Malone basically for a bunch of crap. And it really sent the Sixers into a tailspin for 10 years. Like they made the playoffs a couple times with Charles Barkley, but they were never really a serious contender, I guess you could say, until Allen Iverson came. So I went to AI this week, and essentially this Fridays with AI, there's three different scenarios that could have happened. All three of how AI played these out are better than what happened in reality. So let's start with scenario one. They trade Moses but keep the pick, which probably is highly likely because they were looking to move on from Moses anyway. But Charles Barkley and Brad Daugherty, according to AI, become a formidable like twin towers down low, kind of like the thump and bump that they tried to do with Rick Mahorn and Charles. But they still remain a contender. And you had kind of the end of Dr. J's run. You still had Mo Cheeks. You had a banged up Andrew Toney. But with just those two and a lack of shooters, they never really get over the hump. They wouldn't have been good enough to get past the bad boy Pistons and the Bulls of the time. Maybe, though, it changes the way they draft. I feel because it was almost like a curse or a jinx that they traded that number one pick. And so maybe that changes the way they draft. But I don't know. I think there was just a ton of bad karma for doing that because they had acquired that pick back in the 70s and we're sitting on it. I think this was the pick that they got rid of when they traded Kobe Bryant's dad, Jelly Bean Bryant, to the Clippers in exchange for this pick years and years and years later. Turned out to be the number one pick. And I think the basketball gods are like, you guys are just screwing up. Unfortunately, in this scenario, though, Barkley still likely gets frustrated due to the front office's lack of getting them quality shooters behind him and or playing in front of him and Daugherty. Once a ring, and Daugherty was out of the league around the same time as like 93, 94, as Charles got traded anyway. Hersey Hawkins just was not the answer for this team in reality and even in AI. They needed a shooter that they never got, so they were never able to quite get over the hump. Although you had two big thump and bump, twin towers, whatever you want to call them, perennial all-stars. But it keeps the Sixers competitive at least, and they don't go into the dreck and the tailspin that they went in. Scenario two, they keep Moses but trade the pick. Probably the unlikeliest of the three scenarios because they wanted to get younger, they wanted to get faster. They didn't think Moses was going to come back from the fractured orbital bone anyway. But let's just say, for the sake of argument, they keep him. This one, AI was very high because Moses still played at a high level after the trade. They were formidable, kind of, again, the thump and bump. You had the old vet, the young upstart. They would be able to hang with the bad boys with Moses Malone. Moses was savvy. Moses had the championship pedigree. And in 1987-88, AI says they would have taken down the bad boys, got to the finals, and lose in an epic 7-game series. And that was pretty much the high point if they would have kept Moses. And they continue to miss on the draft picks. Again, I think it comes back sometimes. That you just don't have the confidence. Look at Howie Roseman. Howie Roseman wasn't always a great drafter, but once he started getting that swag and he has confidence, I feel like the guys they drafted this year are going to have an impact on this team. That's what the Sixers lacked, and I think it went the other way. Talk about momentum and snowballing and all this all the time. That's what happened with the Sixers with the draft picks. They still end up trading Moses eventually, and then ultimately end up trading Barkley right around, again, around the same time. But they do have that finals run where they were able to get past the Pistons and go toe to toe with the Lakers. Now, scenario three would be the perfect situation. And if they kept Moses and brought in Brad Daugherty, Moses could have served not one as a player and a contributor on that team, and then a mentor for Charles and Brad Daugherty. So in this scenario, they come out and win 58 games that first season, Brad Daugherty in the 86-87 season, lose to the Celtics in the Eastern Conference Final. However, this is where it gets crazy because I did a lot of research on this one, and this could have really happened. Dr. J retired after that season. Sixers realizing they're on the cusp and they need somebody to fill that void at small forward, get aggressive and snag Scottie Pippen. And Scottie went, I believe, fifth in that 87 draft, all by Seattle, was traded to the Bulls. So there's no doubt in my mind because the Sixers, by not trading Moses Malone, would have had the draft capital to maybe entice a team like the Supersonics to trade a couple picks. They didn't really have the players, but I looked at it and spent way too much time looking on the potential Scottie Pippen to the Sixers. Very plausible scenario. So Pippen that first year is a six-man off the bench, uh, defensive specialist his rookie year. They get back to the finals. Just both the scenarios, they get back to the finals against the Lakers in 87, 88, still lose to the Lakers in 7. However, 88, 89, all of a sudden you have a big three of Scottie Pippen, Brad Daugherty, and Charles Barkley. They win the title, forever changing Charles Barkley's legacy as the best player to never win a championship. He's the finals MVP. And then from there on out, they're consistently in the Eastern Conference Final. They go on a run of like 5 or 6 straight Eastern Conference Finals. They likely win it in 1991. So they were battling with the Bad Boys. Bad Boys get them a couple times, but without Scottie Pippen being on the Bulls, the Bulls look entirely different. And then Jordan, the Sixers, then become the team that Jordan can't get past. It was the Celtics, it was the Pistons, and in this scenario, it's the Sixers that he can just never get past. So the Sixers go back to the finals, get their revenge against the Lakers in 1991. And because of this, winning 2 titles there in the late 80s, early 90s, it changes the dynamic of the Sixers Celtics rivalry as well. It becomes more like Red Sox Yankees. Yes, the Celtics have more, but the Sixers are right there, the team of the now, just like the Red Sox Celtics. Pippen, though, really, really excels and becomes a Hall of Famer in this scenario as well. Not playing in Michael Jordan's shadow, but it changes the whole landscape of the NBA. And it's amazing how one, or in this case, 2 trades changed the entire landscape of the Eastern Conference in the NBA. Had the Sixers kept that pick and took Brad Daugherty, who was hands down the consensus number 1 pick that year, you see what happens. Sixers win 2 titles. Michael Jordan probably is still the GOAT, but maybe he's more in a looked at as a LeBron James type GOAT. You never know. It's just an interesting way to look at it. But that is Fridays with AI, brought to you by Philly Goat. Let me know what you think. I think, like I said, scenario 3 is very plausible. I looked every which way, and the Sixers certainly could have made that move for Scottie Pippen. But let me know your thoughts on that. Hit me up on the Back to the Future voice and text line 267-495-8531. Get that. Anything else Philly sports related off your chest. Want to talk trash on the Mets? That's fair game too. Hit me up on social media. The Discord channel is open. First link in the description. But I like this one. And I still look back at it. And the fact that I had to go through the Sharon Wright, Clarence Weatherspoon, Sean Bradley era because they traded Moses in the number 1 pick. Yeah, I just always thought of NBA basketball as we're just a second tier team. And essentially, that's what the Sixers were. But had they kept them, they could have won 2 titles. But let me know your thoughts. Is it plausible? Today's trivia question. Phillies Mets. Lots of players have played for the Phillies and Mets. Which players have played for both the Phillies and the Mets and have been all-stars with both teams? That is today's trivia question. Hit me up again on social media, the Back to the Future voice and text line, or the Discord channel. But give me your answers. I think I got it narrowed down to 4, but there might be more. But let's have some fun with this. It's Phillies Mets this weekend. So which players were all stars for both the Phillies and the Mets? And then finally today, our greatest individual season in Philly sports history. I already told you Ryan Howard is moving on the 3 seed, 71% over Mike Schmidt's 1986 MVP season. Probably his worst season of the 3 MVP, if you can have a worse season. But the right move, Ryan Howard moves on. Today we go to the Flyers region and second round matchup. The number 1 seed, Mark Recchi from 1992-93 takes on the number 9 seed, Claude Giroux from 2011-2012. Recchi was an all-star, set a Flyers record with 123 points, 53 goals, 5 of them game winners, 20 power play goals. And this was a tough year for the Flyers. It was Eric Lindros's first year with the team. They finished 4 points out of the playoff spot, but the future was bright as they would just continue their rise, culminating in the Stanley Cup final in 1997. In 2011 and 2012, Claude Giroux was an all-star, 93 points, 28 goals, 65 assists, 5 game-winning goals. Flyers that year were the 5 seed, upset the Penguins in the first round before losing to the Devils. Now it's your turn. Whose season was better? Mark Recchi in 92-93, Giroux in 2011-12. Get your votes in any way you can. Send me smoke signals if you want. Pony Express, whatever you got to do, get your answers or get your vote in. And just a shout out, it's Friday. You're probably going to the shore. Let Beach Caddy do your move in, move out. They're accepting reservations now. Go to beachcaddy.app. Use the promo code Jimbo. Take 10% off your move in, move out bellhop service. And of course, they have the best beach carts at the Jersey Shore, the nice big wheels. So hit Beach Caddy up, use the promo code Jimbo, and have them take the stress out of your trip to the shore. All right, it's Phillies Mets. Whoo-wee. Looking forward to this one. In 2009, Ryan Howard basically has his flu game, comes off the bench after being in the hospital, hits a 3-run homer. The bullpen couldn't hold it down, though. 2006 hit the first ball into the third deck at Citizens Bank Park. Jimmy Rollins in 2004 hit the first inside the park home run at Citizens Bank Park. And my man, Larry Jackson, beat the Mets for the 18th straight time, holding them to 1 hit on this day in 1967, a 4-0 Phillies win. But of course, Larry is more known for being involved in the Ferguson-Jenkins trade. All right, last show of the week. Looking forward to a day off after 1,017 straight days. I'm taking the day off. I deserve it. I needed it. But we'll be back on Monday where we'll rewind the weekend, talk all Phillies, Mets, and how this series plays out. And then, of course, on the horizon next week, we have the NBA draft and the NHL draft. It's an exciting week coming up here in Philly sports. So enjoy your weekend. We will be back Monday. This has been This Day in Philly Sports History for June 20th, 2025. My name's Jim Montgomery. Go have yourselves a feel-good Friday. Have a great weekend, and I'll see you Monday. Yeah.